My name is David Morrison, and I'm a 52-year-old architect living in Portland, Oregon. I've always considered myself a good father, maybe not perfect, but present, caring, and involved in my son's life. My wife, Catherine, passed away 6 years ago from breast cancer, leaving me to raise our son, Ethan, on my own. He was 17 then, a junior in high school. Now he's 23, graduated from college, and working at a tech startup downtown. The relationship between Ethan and me had always been solid. We had our rough patches during his teenage years, especially after Catherine died, but we came through them stronger, or so I thought. It started on a Tuesday night in late October. I'd been working late on a project for a new community center in the Pearl District, hunched over my drafting table in my home office until well past midnight. My eyes burned from staring at blueprints, and my lower back ached from sitting too long. I decided to call it a night and headed to the kitchen for a glass of water before bed. Our house is a renovated craftsman-style home in the Hawthorne district, 3 bedrooms, hardwood floors throughout, and enough character to make it feel like a real home rather than just a house. Ethan had the entire second floor to himself, which included his bedroom, a bathroom, and what used to be Catherine's art studio that he'd converted into a sort of lounge area. As I walked down the hallway toward the stairs, I noticed a faint light coming from under Ethan's door. That wasn't unusual, he was a night owl, always had been, but there was something else. Voices. Low, hushed voices punctuated by soft laughter. I stopped at the base of the stairs, my hand on the banister. Ethan had company. My first instinct was to respect his privacy. He was 23, an adult, and entitled to have friends over whenever he wanted. But it was past midnight on a weeknight and he had work in the morning. More than that, something in the tone of those voices, intimate, secretive, made me pause. I stood there for a full minute, debating with myself. Then I heard something that made my heart skip, a sound that was unmistakably romantic, tender, not anything explicit, just the kind of soft murmur you hear between two people who are more than friends. Before I could stop myself, I was climbing the stairs. I knocked gently on Ethan's door. "Ethan, you still awake?" The voices stopped immediately. There was a scrambling sound, quick and panicked, followed by footsteps. "Oh yeah, Dad, just a second." I waited, my pulse quickening. What was I doing? Why did I suddenly feel like I was invading something sacred? The door opened and Ethan stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his dark hair disheveled, his cheeks slightly flushed. He blocked the doorway with his body and his green eyes, so much like Catherine's, held a mixture of surprise and something else. Fear, guilt. "Hey," he said too brightly, "what's up?" "I heard voices," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just wanted to make sure everything was okay." "Yeah, everything's fine, just, watching videos, YouTube." I looked past him into the room. His laptop was indeed open on his bed, but the screen was dark. The window was open, letting in the cool October air, and his room had that particular quality of space that's been recently occupied by more than one person, a sense of presence beyond the visible. "YouTube," I repeated. "Yeah," he nodded, perhaps too enthusiastically. "You know, reaction videos, they can get pretty loud." I wanted to call him on the obvious lie, but something in his expression stopped me. He looked vulnerable, almost desperate, in a way I hadn't seen since he was a child and had broken Catherine's favorite vase. "Okay," I said finally, "just keep it down, all right, it's late." Relief flooded his face. "Sure thing, Dad, sorry about that." "Good night, Ethan." "Night." He closed the door quickly and I stood there in the hallway feeling unsettled. I knew my son. I knew when he was lying, but I also knew that whatever was going on, he wasn't ready to tell me about it. I went to bed that night with a strange heaviness in my chest, unable to shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I'd previously overlooked or dismissed. Ethan's phone would buzz with messages at odd hours, and he'd check them with a small, secret smile before quickly putting the phone away. He started coming home later from work, always with explanations about happy hours or team dinners, but there was an energy about him, a barely contained excitement that suggested something more. He'd started dressing differently too, not radically but noticeably. More attention to his appearance, better fitting clothes, a new cologne that smelled expensive. He'd always been a good-looking kid, tall, lean, with strong features and that thick dark hair, but now he seemed aware of it in a way he hadn't been before. And then there were the midnight visits. I started waking up around that time, my sleep disturbed by some unconscious awareness of movement in the house. I'd hear the soft creak of the front door, footsteps on the stairs, low voices, and then silence. Sometimes I'd hear them again hours later, the sound of someone leaving, the door closing with careful quietness, Ethan's footsteps returning to his room. I never got up to investigate. Some part of me didn't want to know, didn't want to confront whatever truth was unfolding in my house under cover of darkness. But the curiosity gnawed at me, and beneath the curiosity was something else, concern, fear maybe, not fear of what Ethan was doing, but fear that he felt he couldn't tell me about it. Catherine would have known what to do. She'd always been better at reading Ethan, at knowing when to push and when to give space. I missed her terribly in those weeks, missed her wisdom and her gentle strength. One Friday evening in early November, I came home from work to find Ethan in the kitchen cooking dinner. This was unusual. We typically fended for ourselves or ordered takeout. But there he was, standing at the stove with a dish towel thrown over his shoulder, stirring something that smelled incredible. "Hey, Dad," he said when I walked in. "I'm making risotto, should be ready in about 20 minutes. "Risotto?" I set my briefcase down, surprised. "Since when do you cook risotto?" He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Been watching some cooking shows, thought I'd try something new." I leaned against the counter, watching him work. He moved with confidence like he'd done this before, his hands sure as he added wine to the pan, letting it sizzle and reduce. "This is nice," I said, "unexpected but nice." He glanced at me then, and I saw something in his expression, a softness, a vulnerability. "I thought maybe we could have dinner together like we used to, we haven't done that in a while." He was right. Over the past year, we'd fallen into a pattern of parallel living, coexisting in the same house but rarely really connecting. Work consumed most of my time, and Ethan had his own life, his own routines. "I'd like that," I said. We ate dinner at the dining room table, something we hadn't done in months. The risotto was excellent, creamy and rich with mushrooms and parmesan. We talked about work, about the projects I was designing, about his job at the startup. The conversation was easy, comfortable, and for a little while I forgot about the midnight voices and the secrets. But as we were clearing the dishes, Ethan's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, read the message, and that smile appeared again, the one that transformed his face, made him look younger and more alive. "Important message?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. He pocketed the phone quickly. "Just a friend. Must be a good friend." He met my eyes then, and in that moment I saw everything. The truth was right there in his face, the hope, the fear, the longing to tell me, but the terror of how I might react. "Yeah," he said softly, "a really good friend." I wanted to push, to ask the questions that were burning in my mind, but something held me back. Trust, maybe, or cowardice. "Well," I said, "I'm glad you have good friends." He nodded, relief and disappointment warring on his face. "Thanks, Dad." That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about all the times over the past few years when Ethan might have tried to tell me something and I'd been too busy or too distracted to notice. I thought about Catherine and what she would say if she were here. "You need to create the space for him to tell you," I could almost hear her voice. "Don't force it, but let him know you're ready to listen." Around 2 in the morning, I heard it again. The front door opening, footsteps on the stairs, 2 sets this time, and then Ethan's door closing softly. This time I didn't go investigate. But I made a decision. Tomorrow I would talk to my son, really talk to him, and I would make sure he knew that whatever he needed to tell me, I was ready to hear it. Saturday morning dawned gray and drizzly, typical Portland November weather. I woke early, my mind still churning with thoughts from the night before. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table rehearsing what I might say to Ethan. He came downstairs around 10, his hair wet from a shower, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. He looked tired but content, and there was something different about him, a kind of glow that I recognized from my own youth, from the early days with Catherine. "Morning," he said, heading straight for the coffee pot. "Morning, sleep well?" "Yeah, pretty well." He poured his coffee and leaned against the counter, wrapping both hands around the mug. "What are you up to today?" "Actually, I was hoping we could talk." His body tensed immediately. "Talk about what?" "Nothing bad," I said quickly. I just feel like we haven't really connected in a while, and I wanted to check in with you, see how you're doing." He relaxed slightly but still looked wary. "I'm doing fine, Dad, work's good, life's good." "I'm glad to hear that." I took a breath. "But I also want you to know that if there's anything going on in your life, anything at all, you can talk to me about it. I know I've been pretty wrapped up in work lately and I haven't been as present as I should be, but I'm here now and I'm listening." Ethan looked down at his coffee and I could see the war playing out behind his eyes. He wanted to tell me something, I could feel it, but he was scared. "There is something," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart started pounding. "Okay." He looked up at me and his eyes were shining with unshed tears. "But I don't know how to say it, I don't know how you'll react." I stood up and walked over to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, you're my son, nothing you could tell me would change that, nothing." He set his coffee down and ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture he'd had since childhood. "I've been seeing someone." "Okay," I said, trying to sound encouraging. "That's good, right?" "Yeah, it's really good actually, amazing, but," he trailed off, searching for words. "But," he took a deep breath, "it's not what you might expect." I waited, giving him space to continue. "The person I've been seeing, his name is Alex." The words hung in the air between us, his, Alex, not her, him. I wish I could say that I reacted perfectly in that moment, that I immediately pulled him into a hug and told him I loved him and that nothing had changed. But the truth is I was stunned. Not because I was opposed to the idea, I'd always considered myself liberal, accepting, open-minded. But because this was my son and this was information that recontextualized so much of our lives together. "Oh," I said, and immediately hated how inadequate that sounded. Ethan's face crumpled. "See, I knew." "No, wait," I interrupted. "I'm sorry that came out wrong, I'm just surprised I didn't know that I'm gay." "Yeah." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Neither did I for a long time, or maybe I did and just didn't want to admit it." I pulled out a chair and sat down, my legs suddenly feeling weak. "Tell me about Alex." Ethan looked at me uncertainly. "You really want to know?" "Yes, I really want to know." He sat down across from me and slowly, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, he began to talk. "I met him 4 months ago at a coffee shop downtown, Stumpton, the one on Division. I was working on my laptop and he came over and asked if he could share my table because the place was packed. We started talking and," he smiled, that beautiful, transformative smile. "We just clicked, like immediately. We ended up talking for 3 hours." "What does he do?" I asked. "He's a graphic designer, freelance. He's 25, from Seattle originally. He moved here 2 years ago." Ethan's whole demeanor changed as he talked about Alex. He became animated, his eyes bright, his hands moving expressively. "He's incredible, Dad. He's smart and funny and kind. He's passionate about his work but also about social justice and environmental issues. He volunteers at a homeless shelter on weekends and he makes me happy, happier than I've ever been." Listening to him, watching him light up, I felt a rush of emotion. This was my son in love, and despite my surprise, despite having to adjust my understanding of who he was, I could see how genuine this was. "And you've been keeping this secret for 4 months?" His face fell. "I wanted to tell you so many times, but I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared you'd be disappointed, scared you'd think differently of me, scared I'd lose you." His voice cracked on the last words. I reached across the table and took his hand. "Ethan, listen to me, you could never lose me. I'm your father and I love you. That's not conditional on who you date or who you fall in love with. Do you understand?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face now. "I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like you couldn't tell me this. I'm sorry if I was so wrapped up in my own stuff that I didn't see what you were going through." "It's not your fault," he said, wiping his eyes. "I was the one keeping secrets. Why don't you tell me more about him, about Alex? I want to understand this part of your life." And so he did. For the next hour, Ethan told me everything about their first date at a Thai restaurant in Belmont, about their second date at the Portland Art Museum, about how Alex made him laugh and challenged him to think differently about things. He told me about introducing Alex to his friends and how accepting everyone had been. He told me about the midnight visits, how they'd been trained to keep things quiet because Alex's apartment had a roommate situation that was complicated. "I should have asked you if it was okay for him to come over," Ethan said. "This is your house." "This is our house," I corrected. "And yes, it would have been nice to know, but I understand why you did it. You weren't ready to tell me yet." Are you really okay with this? He asked, searching my face, with me being gay. I took a moment to really think about the question, to examine my feelings honestly. Was I completely comfortable? Not yet, but that was about adjusting my understanding, not about any fundamental problem with who Ethan was. Was I supportive? Absolutely. I'm okay with you being who you are, I said. Am I still processing? Yeah, a little. But that's my stuff to work through, not yours. What matters to me is that you're happy and healthy and living authentically. And from what you've told me about Alex, it sounds like he makes you very happy. He does. Then I'd like to meet him properly, not a midnight visit, a real introduction. Ethan's face broke into a huge smile. Really? Really, invite him to dinner next week. I'll cook, or we can order in if you don't trust my cooking. He laughed, a real laugh this time, and came around the table to hug me. I held my son close, feeling his body shake with relief and emotion, and I sent up a silent thank you to Catherine. Somehow, we'd managed to navigate this crucial moment without completely screwing it up. The following Friday evening, I found myself more nervous than I'd been in years. I'd spent the afternoon preparing dinner, nothing too elaborate but nice enough to show I was making an effort. Roasted chicken with herbs, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and a salad. I'd even picked up a decent bottle of wine and a chocolate cake from a local bakery. Ethan had been in his room for the past hour, changing clothes 3 times and checking his phone constantly. "Dad, what time is it?" he called down. 6:45, he's supposed to be here at 7, right? Yeah, do I look okay? I climbed the stairs to find him standing in front of his mirror wearing dark jeans and a nice button-down shirt. He looked handsome and terrified. "You look great," I assured him. "Relax, it's just dinner." "Just dinner," he repeated. "Right, just dinner where my boyfriend meets my dad for the first time." "Boyfriend," I said, testing the word. "Is that what you're calling him?" Ethan turned to me vulnerable. "Is that okay?" "Of course it is." The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Ethan practically flew down the stairs and I followed at a more measured pace, trying to project calm even though my heart was racing. When Ethan opened the door, I got my first look at Alex. He was slightly shorter than Ethan, maybe 5'10", with sandy blonde hair styled in a modern cut. He wore dark slacks and a rust-colored sweater that brought out the warmth in his hazel eyes. He had an open, friendly face with a light dusting of freckles across his nose, and when he smiled at Ethan, it was with such obvious affection that I felt something in my chest loosen. "Hey," Alex said, and his voice was warm and slightly nervous. "Hey," Ethan replied, and they did this little dance of wanting to touch each other but being aware of me watching. "Come in," I said, stepping forward. "You must be Alex, I'm David." Alex turned to me and extended his hand. His handshake was firm, and when our eyes met, I saw determination there beneath the nervousness. "It's so good to finally meet you, Mr. Morrison. Ethan's told me a lot about you." "Please call me David, and I wish I could say the same, but I only learned about you last week." There was a moment of awkward silence and then Alex smiled ruefully. "Yeah, I heard. I told Ethan he should have said something sooner." "It's okay," I said. "You're here now, come on in, dinner's almost ready." We moved into the living room and I offered Alex a glass of wine, which he accepted. The conversation started stiffly, weather, traffic, his drive over from his apartment in southeast Portland, but gradually became more natural. "Ethan tells me you're a graphic designer," I said. "That's right, I do freelance work, mostly branding and web design for small businesses and startups." "That must be interesting work." "It is. I like the variety, getting to work with different clients and industries, though it can be unstable at times." "I can imagine. I'm an architect, so I understand the project-based nature of the work." Alex's eyes lit up. "Ethan mentioned that. He showed me some of your designs online. The community center in the Pearl District is beautiful." "Thank you. Are you interested in architecture?" "Very much so. I actually minored in it in college before deciding to focus on graphic design. The principles are similar in a lot of ways: form, function, how people interact with spaces." We talked about design and Portland's architecture, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the conversation. Alex was articulate and passionate, and he had thoughtful opinions about urban development and sustainability. More than that, I could see the way he and Ethan interacted, the small glances, the way Alex's hand would occasionally brush Ethan's arm, the private smiles they shared. Over dinner, the conversation flowed more easily. Alex asked me questions about my work, about how I got into architecture, about my process. He told stories about his own work, about a particularly difficult client who wanted their logo to include every color in the rainbow plus black, and another who communicated entirely through interpretive dance videos. Ethan relaxed as the evening went on, the tension leaving his shoulders as he realized that Alex and I were getting along. At one point, I caught him watching us with such an expression of relief and happiness that I had to look away, emotion catching in my throat. After dinner, over cake and coffee, Alex asked, "Would it be okay if I asked you something, David?" "Of course." Ethan mentioned that his mother passed away several years ago. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for your loss. He talks about her a lot and it's clear how much she meant to both of you." I was surprised by the directness of the statement but also touched. "Thank you, she was the best person I've ever known. Ethan gets his kindness from her." "I wish I could have met her," Alex said quietly. "She would have liked you," I found myself saying, and I meant it. Catherine had always been an excellent judge of character, and she would have seen what I was seeing, this young man's genuine care for our son. Alex smiled and I saw moisture in his eyes. "That means a lot." Later, as I was clearing dishes in the kitchen, I heard Ethan and Alex talking in low voices in the living room. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was tender, intimate. When I returned with coffee, they were sitting closer together on the couch, Alex's hand resting on Ethan's knee. "So," I said, settling into the armchair across from them, "how did you two actually get together?" "Ethan told me about meeting at the coffee shop, but I'm curious about the rest." Alex and Ethan exchanged a look, and Ethan nodded, as if giving permission. "Well," Alex began, "after that first meeting at Stumptown, we exchanged numbers. I texted him that night and we ended up texting until 3 in the morning. The next day I asked him to lunch and then dinner the day after that. By the end of the first week, we'd seen each other 5 times. I played it so cool," Ethan added sarcastically. "You were adorable," Alex said, and the look he gave Ethan was so full of affection that I had to look away again. "But I was just as eager. I'd known I was gay since high school, but I'd never met anyone who made me feel the way Ethan did. We just fit." "Ethan said he didn't really know until he met you," I said. Alex nodded. "That's true. We talked about it a lot in those early days. He'd dated girls before and he thought that's what he was supposed to do, but he'd never really felt that connection, that spark. And then I met Alex," Ethan said, "and suddenly everything made sense. All those years of feeling like something was slightly off, like I was performing a role instead of being myself, it all clicked into place." "That must have been overwhelming," I said. "It was," Ethan admitted, "but also liberating, like I finally understood who I was." We talked for another hour, and with each passing minute I became more comfortable with the reality of my son's relationship. Alex was clearly good for Ethan. He brought out a lightness in him that I hadn't seen in years. They challenged each other intellectually, supported each other emotionally, and clearly enjoyed each other's company. When Alex finally said he should get going around 10:30, Ethan walked him to the door. I stayed in the living room giving them privacy, but I could hear their low voices, the sound of a kiss, Ethan's soft laughter. After Alex left, Ethan came back into the living room with an expression of cautious hope. "So," he asked, "what did you think?" "I think he's great," I said honestly. "Smart, kind, clearly crazy about you, what's not to like?" Ethan's whole face lit up. "Really, you really like him?" "I really do, and more importantly, I can see how happy he makes you." Ethan sat down on the couch and suddenly he looked like the little boy I used to read bedtime stories to. "I was so scared, Dad, scared that you wouldn't approve, scared that this would change things between us." "Things have changed," I said and saw alarm flash across his face. "But not in a bad way. I know you better now, I understand more about who you are, and that's a good thing." "I wish Mom could have met him," Ethan said quietly. "Me too, but I think she knows, and I think she's happy for you." We sat in comfortable silence for a while and then Ethan said, "Thank you for tonight, for making an effort, for being kind to Alex. It means everything to me." "You don't have to thank me for accepting you, Ethan. That's just basic parenting." Not all parents do it, he said. Alex's parents, they didn't take it well when he came out. He hasn't spoken to his dad in 3 years. My heart broke a little at that. That's their loss and their failure. I'm really lucky to have you, Ethan said. I'm lucky to have you too, kid. Over the following weeks, our household settled into a new normal. Alex became a regular presence in our home, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just stopping by to pick Ethan up for a date, sometimes staying over on weekends. I gave them space but also made an effort to include Alex in family activities. It wasn't always easy. I had to adjust my thinking, my assumptions, my vision of what Ethan's future would look like. I'd imagined him getting married to a woman, having children, following a traditional path. Now I had to reimagine all of that to understand that his path would be different but no less valid. There were moments of awkwardness. The first time I saw them kiss in the kitchen, I had to actively stop myself from reacting with surprise. The first time Alex stayed over and I heard them together through the ceiling, I struggled with conflicting feelings, happiness that Ethan had found love, discomfort with the reality of my son's romantic life, and a strange sense of grief for Catherine, who wasn't there to navigate this with me. But there were also beautiful moments. Watching Ethan and Alex cook dinner together, moving around the kitchen with the ease of people who know each other well. Listening to them debate politics and movies and art, their intellectual compatibility evident in every exchange. Seeing Ethan more confident, more himself, more alive than he'd been in years. One evening in mid-December, about a month after meeting Alex, I was working late in my office when there was a knock on the door. Alex stood there looking nervous. "Hey David. You got a minute?" "Of course, come in." I cleared some blueprints off a chair. "Ethan's not home. He had to work late, but actually I wanted to talk to you, alone." My stomach tightened. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine, great, actually." He sat down, then stood up again, clearly agitated. "I'm sorry, I'm nervous." "What's going on?" He took a deep breath. "I wanted to ask your blessing for something. I know that might seem old-fashioned, but it feels important to me." My heart started pounding. "Okay. I want to ask Ethan to move in with me." I blinked, surprised. "Move in with you?" "Yeah, I know you two have this great house and he's comfortable here, but my lease is up in February and I'm looking at a new place. A 2-bedroom in Laurelhurst. It's bigger, nicer, and there's a great office space for him. And he paused, gathering his thoughts. "I love him, David. I've never been more sure of anything. I want to build a life with him." I sat back in my chair, processing. Part of me wanted to object, to say that Ethan was too young, that they were moving too fast, that I wasn't ready to have him move out. But looking at Alex's earnest face, I realized this wasn't about me or my readiness. "How does Ethan feel about this?" I asked. "I haven't asked him yet. I wanted to talk to you first. I know you're his only parent and I know how close you two are. I didn't want to do this without your blessing." I was moved by the respect he was showing, by his consideration of my feelings. "That means a lot, Alex, really. So what do you think?" I thought about Ethan, about the man he'd become, about how he deserved to live his own life and make his own choices. I thought about Catherine and what she would say. And I thought about Alex, who in just a few weeks had shown himself to be exactly the kind of person I'd want my son to be with. "I think," I said slowly, "that if this is what you both want, then you have my full support." Alex's face broke into a huge smile. "Really? Really, but I have a question for you." "Anything. What are your intentions with my son, long-term, I mean?" Alex met my eyes without hesitation. "I intend to love him for as long as he'll have me. I intend to support his dreams and build a life with him. I know we're young and I know we haven't been together that long, but I've never been more certain of anything. Ethan is it for me." "Marriage," I asked, "is that something you see in your future?" "Absolutely, when the time is right, when we're both ready." He leaned forward. "I know gay marriage is still relatively new and I know not everyone is comfortable with it, but—" "I'm comfortable with it," I interrupted. "If that's what you two want, you have my full support." Alex's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, David, that means more than you know." We talked for another half hour about practical things, the new apartment, the neighborhood, how the move would work. By the time Ethan came home, Alex and I had moved from the office to the kitchen, where we were having a beer and talking about sports. "What's this?" Ethan asked, looking between us with curiosity and maybe a little concern. "Just getting to know each other better," I said. "Beer." Sure, he grabbed one from the fridge and sat down. What have you two been talking about? Your father was telling me about his college basketball days, Alex said smoothly. Apparently he was quite the player. Oh no, not the basketball stories, Ethan groaned, but he was smiling. I watched them together, the easy affection, the comfortable teasing, and felt a deep sense of peace. My son was happy, he was loved, that was all that really mattered. A few days before Christmas, Ethan asked if we could talk again. We sat in the living room where a small Christmas tree, our first since Catherine died, twinkled with lights in the corner. So, Ethan began, Alex and I have been talking and there's something we want to do, but I wanted to run it by you first. Okay. We want to come out publicly, as a couple, on social media. I considered this. What does that mean exactly? It means posting photos together, changing relationship statuses, being open about who we are. Right now, most of our mutual friends know, but our families and professional connections don't. We've been keeping things quiet and it's starting to feel dishonest. What about your professional life? Are you worried about any backlash? A little, he admitted. But my company has a strong LGBTQ plus inclusion policy and most of my coworkers are pretty progressive, and even if there is some backlash, living authentically is more important to me than hiding. What about Alex's family? You mentioned they haven't been accepting. Ethan's face clouded. That's part of why we want to do this. Alex has been living partially in the closet around certain people to avoid conflict with his family, but he's realized that their approval isn't worth compromising who he is. He's ready to be fully out regardless of the consequences. That's brave of him, of both of you. So you think we should do it? I think you should do whatever feels right for you. This is your life, Ethan. You don't need my permission to live it authentically. I know, but your opinion matters to me. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. Then here's my opinion. I think you should be proud of who you are and who you love. I think hiding is exhausting and ultimately damaging. And I think the people who matter will support you and the people who don't support you don't matter. He smiled. Mom used to say something like that. She did, she was a wise woman. There's one more thing, Ethan said. Alex wants to spend Christmas with us. His family made it clear he's not welcome home if he's going to flaunt his lifestyle. Those were his dad's words. Anger flared in my chest. Of course he's welcome here, I'll make up the guest room for him. Are you sure? I know Christmas is hard for you without Mom. It'll be less hard with you both here, I said honestly. Besides, Christmas is about family and Alex is, well, he's family now too, isn't he? Ethan's eyes got misty. Yeah, he is. Christmas morning was different than any we'd had in years. The house was warm and filled with laughter. Alex had helped Ethan make breakfast, French toast and bacon and fresh squeezed orange juice. We exchanged gifts in the living room and I tried not to think about the fact that there should be 4 of us here, not 3. But then Alex unwrapped the gift I'd gotten him, a high-quality stylus and drawing tablet for his design work, and his face lit up with such genuine delight that I felt Catherine's presence in the room, as if she were nodding approvingly. David, this is too much, Alex said. It's not enough, I replied. You've made my son happy, that's priceless. Later, after we'd eaten too much prime rib and pie, we sat around the living room in a food coma. Ethan and Alex were cuddled together on the couch and I was in my armchair with a glass of wine. Can I tell you two something? I said. They both looked up, alert to the serious tone in my voice. When Catherine was dying, one of the last conversations we had was about you, Ethan. She was worried about leaving you, worried that you'd be okay without her. And I promised her that I would take care of you, that I would love you unconditionally, that I would support you in being whoever you were meant to be. My voice cracked and I had to pause. Ethan's eyes were wet. I think I lost sight of that promise for a while. I got so caught up in my own grief and my own life that I stopped really seeing you, and I'm sorry for that, but I want you to know that I'm keeping that promise now. Both of you, Ethan and Alex, you have my complete support and love. Ethan got up and hugged me, and then Alex joined in, and we stood there in a 3-way embrace that felt like a new beginning. That night, Ethan and Alex posted their first public photo together, a selfie in front of our Christmas tree, both of them smiling, Ethan's head resting on Alex's shoulder. The caption read, Merry Christmas from us. Living authentically, loving openly, grateful for family who accepts us as we are. White Rainbow Red. Within hours, the post had hundreds of likes and comments. Most were supportive, some were from people I'd known for years expressing surprise but acceptance, and a few were negative. I watched Ethan checking his phone periodically, his expression fluctuating between happiness and anxiety. "How are you doing with all this?" I asked him. "Honestly, it's overwhelming, but also liberating. I didn't realize how much energy I was spending on hiding until I stopped having to do it." "Any regrets?" "None, well, maybe one." "What's that?" "I wish I'd done it sooner. I wish I'd been braver earlier." "You were brave when you were ready to be brave," I said. "That's all anyone can ask." Yeah. January came with its typical Portland rain and gray skies. True to Alex's plan, he and Ethan started apartment hunting. I found myself with mixed emotions: pride that my son was taking this next step, sadness at the prospect of him moving out, and something else I didn't immediately recognize: anxiety about being alone in the house again. Over the past few months, I'd gotten used to having people around, to the sound of laughter and conversation, to the presence of life in the house beyond just me. Going back to being alone felt daunting. One Saturday afternoon, while Ethan and Alex were at an apartment viewing, I found myself in what had been Catherine's art studio. After she died, I'd packed away most of her supplies but left the space largely as it had been, a shrine to her memory, gathering dust. I stood in the doorway, really looking at it for the first time in years. The easel was still set up with her last painting unfinished, a landscape of Mount Hood that she'd been working on when she got too sick to paint. Her brushes sat in jars on the shelf, bristles stiff from disuse. Canvases were stacked against the walls, some painted, some blank with possibility. It was time to let go, I realized, not of Catherine's memory but of this frozen moment. She wouldn't have wanted her space to become a mausoleum. I spent the next few hours going through the studio, deciding what to keep and what to donate. I found sketches she'd made of Ethan as a child, paintings from our travels, color studies, and experimental pieces. I kept her favorites and packed up the rest to donate to a local arts program. When Ethan came home that evening, he found me in the studio, surrounded by boxes. "Dad, what's going on?" "I'm clearing out the studio," I said. "It's time." He looked around the room with sad eyes. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Your mom wouldn't have wanted this space to sit unused. She'd want it to have life and purpose." "What are you going to do with it?" "I'm not sure yet. Maybe turn it into a proper office, or maybe," I paused, considering, "maybe leave it as a studio, start painting again." "You used to paint." "A little. Back in college, your mom and I used to paint together sometimes. I wasn't very good, but I enjoyed it." Ethan stepped into the room, picking up one of Catherine's small paintings, a watercolor of our garden. I'd forgotten how talented she was. She really was. She saw beauty everywhere. "She'd be happy, about me and Alex." "I know she would. And she'd be proud of you for accepting us." I set down the box I was holding and looked at my son. "I hope I'm making her proud. I hope I'm being the father she knew I could be." "You are," Ethan said firmly. "Trust me, Dad, you really are." We worked together for the next hour, going through the studio, sharing memories of Catherine. It was sad but also healing, a way of honoring her while also acknowledging that life continued. As we were finishing up, Ethan said, "Alex and I found a place. The 2-bedroom in Laurelhurst. We're going to put in an application." "That's great," I said, and mostly meant it. "But we were talking, you'll have this whole house to yourself. That's going to be weird, right?" "I'll adjust." "What if you didn't have to?" I looked at him questioningly. "What if you got a roommate, or, I don't know, started dadding again?" The suggestion caught me off guard. Dadding. "Yeah, Dad, you're 52, not 92. You're allowed to have a life." "I have a life." "You have work, that's not the same thing." I wanted to argue, but he had a point. For the past 6 years since Catherine died, I'd thrown myself into work and parenthood, leaving no space for anything else. The idea of dadding felt foreign and vaguely terrifying. "I don't know, Ethan, it's been a long time." "Just think about it," he said. "Mom would want you to be happy. She wouldn't want you to be alone forever." In mid-February, I helped Ethan and Alex move into their new apartment. It was a beautiful place: hardwood floors, lots of natural light, a view of Laurelhurst Park. Watching them set up their home together, discussing where to put furniture and how to arrange the kitchen, I felt a bittersweet mixture of happiness and loss. The house felt empty when I got home that night, too big, too quiet, too full of memories and absences. I made myself a simple dinner and sat at the kitchen table alone, something I'd done countless times before but which now felt unbearably lonely. Ethan's words echoed in my mind, "You're allowed to have a life." On impulse, I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through social media, something I rarely did. I saw Ethan's post from earlier, a photo of him and Alex in their new living room, caption reading "First day in our new home, houses red." The comments were full of congratulations and heart emojis. I added my own, "Proud of you both, can't wait to see what you do with the place." As I was putting my phone away, I noticed a friend request from someone named Michael Chen. The profile picture showed an Asian man around my age with kind eyes and a warm smile. I didn't recognize him at first, but when I clicked on the profile, I saw mutual friends, several colleagues from my architecture firm. Curious, I accepted the request. Within minutes, I had a message. "Hi David, I'm Mike Chen. I recently started at Harper and Associates. We haven't officially met yet, but I've heard great things about your work. Looking forward to meeting you in person when you're back in the office." I smiled despite myself and wrote back, "Thanks Mike, welcome to Harper and Associates. I'm sure we'll cross paths soon." It was a small interaction, meaningless really, but it reminded me that there was a world beyond my grief and my empty house. People were out there, living their lives, making connections. Maybe Ethan was right, maybe it was time for me to start living again too. I met Mike Chen officially the following week at a firm-wide meeting. He was the new senior architect who'd been hired to lead the sustainable design division. In person, he was even more striking than his photo, probably a few years younger than me, with an easy confidence and an infectious enthusiasm for his work. After the meeting, we ended up in the break room at the same time. "So you're the David Morrison," he said, pouring himself a coffee. "The community center in Pearl District is yours, right?" "That's right, you've seen it. I've studied it. It's brilliant, the way you integrated green space with the urban environment, the natural light optimization. It's exactly the kind of thoughtful, sustainable design we should be doing more of." I found myself warming to him immediately. "Thank you, that project was a labor of love." We talked for 20 minutes about architecture and design philosophy. Mike had worked in San Francisco for 15 years before moving to Portland to be closer to his aging parents in Seattle. He was passionate about sustainable building practices and had some fascinating ideas about how to incorporate them into urban development. "We should grab lunch sometime," he said as we headed back to our offices. "I'd love to pick your brain about some projects I'm working on." "I'd like that," I said, and realized I meant it. Over the next few weeks, Mike and I did have lunch several times. In fact, what started as professional discussions evolved into genuine friendship. He was easy to talk to, thoughtful and funny. He told me about his failed marriage 10 years ago, about his grown daughter who lived in LA, about his love of hiking and photography. I told him about Catherine, about Ethan, even about my recent journey of accepting Ethan's sexuality and relationship with Alex. "That must have been quite an adjustment," Mike said over Thai food one afternoon. "It was, but seeing how happy Ethan is makes it worth any discomfort I felt." "You're a good father," Mike said. "Not all parents respond that well." "Thanks, though I think good might be generous. I'm still figuring this out as I go." That's what good parents do, they figure it out, they adapt, they put their kids first. There was something in the way he said it that made me curious. "What about you? Do you have a good relationship with your daughter?" His face clouded slightly. "It's complicated. When her mother and I divorced, Rachel was 15. She blamed me, maybe rightfully so. We've been working on rebuilding our relationship, but there's still distance there." "I'm sorry, that must be hard." "It is, but I'm hopeful we'll get there eventually." One Friday evening in early March, Mike invited me to a gallery opening for a photographer friend of his. I almost declined. I typically avoided social events, but something made me say yes. The gallery was in the Alberta Arts District, a converted warehouse space full of dramatic black and white landscapes. Mike introduced me to his friend, the photographer, and several other people. I found myself actually enjoying the evening, engaging in conversations about art and design, feeling like a person rather than just a grieving widower or a concerned father. As the evening was winding down, Mike and I stood in front of a particularly striking photograph, a storm over the Oregon coast. "Thank you for inviting me," I said. "I needed this." "Needed what?" "This, being out, being social. I've been in my own head too much lately." Mike turned to look at me, and there was something in his expression that I couldn't quite read. "You should get out more then. Portland has a lot to offer." "Maybe you could show me around sometime," I said, surprising myself with the suggestion. "I'd like that," he said, and his smile was warm. Walking to our cars later, I found myself thinking about Mike more than I probably should have. He was attractive, certainly, but it was more than that. He was kind and interesting and made me feel like myself again, not the grieving widower, not just the concerned father, but David, just David. And then, as I was driving home, a thought occurred to me that made me pull over to the side of the road. Was I attracted to Mike? The question hung in my mind, shocking and confusing. I was 52 years old, had been married to a woman for 25 years, had never questioned my sexuality. But sitting there in my car, I couldn't deny the flutter of excitement I'd felt standing next to Mike in the gallery, the warmth that spread through me when he smiled, the disappointment I felt when the evening ended. I thought about Ethan, about his journey of self-discovery, about how he'd said he'd never felt that spark with women but immediately felt it with Alex. Was that what this was? Was I experiencing my own late-in-life awakening? Or was I just lonely and projecting onto the first person who'd shown me kindness and attention? I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning. That night I lay in bed unable to sleep, examining my feelings, my past, my assumptions about myself. Had there been signs I'd ignored, feelings I'd repressed, or was this genuinely new? I thought about Catherine and felt a wave of guilt, but then I remembered what Ethan had said: "Mom would want you to be happy." Would she understand if I told her that I might be attracted to a man? I imagined her response, could almost hear her voice: "David, love is love. If this person makes you happy, that's all that matters." But even if Catherine would have understood, I didn't know if I understood. I didn't know what to do with these feelings, didn't know if they were real or just confusion born of loneliness and the emotional upheaval of the past few months. Eventually, I did what I should have done weeks ago. I called Ethan. Ethan answered on the third ring, his voice slightly concerned. "Dad, everything okay? It's midnight." "I know, I'm sorry, I need to talk to someone." "Of course, what's going on?" I took a deep breath. "I think I might be attracted to a man." There was a pause, and then Ethan said, "Okay, tell me about it." I told him everything about Mike, about our lunches, about the gallery opening, about the realization in the car. The words tumbled out in a confused rush, and through it all, Ethan just listened. When I finally ran out of words, he said, "How are you feeling about all this?" "Confused, scared, like I don't know who I am anymore." "That's normal, Dad, it's how I felt too." "But you're 23, I'm 52, aren't I supposed to have this figured out by now?" "There's no age limit on self-discovery," Ethan said gently. "People come out at all stages of life, and besides, you don't have to label it or figure everything out right now. You're allowed to just explore what you're feeling." "What if it's not real? What if I'm just lonely?" "Then you're lonely and could use a friend, there's no harm in that." "But what if it is real? What if I'm gay or bi? What does that mean for my memories of your mother? What does that mean for my entire life up to this point?" "It doesn't mean anything bad," Ethan said firmly. "It doesn't invalidate your love for Mom or your life with her. Sexuality can be fluid. Sometimes people don't discover certain aspects of themselves until later in life. That doesn't make their previous experiences less real or meaningful." "When did you get so wise?" He laughed. "I had a good teacher, and I've had a lot of time to think about these things. Look, Dad, here's what I think. You've spent the last 6 years grieving and focusing entirely on work and being a parent. Now I've moved out, you're lonely, and you've met someone who makes you feel something. That's a good thing, regardless of whether that person is a man or a woman. So what do I do?" "Talk to Mike, be honest with him about what you're feeling, and be honest with yourself. Don't overthink it, just see where it goes. I don't even know if he's gay or interested in me that way. There's only one way to find out. We talked for another hour, and by the end I felt calmer, more centered. Ethan shared some of his own coming-out story, details I hadn't known, the internal struggle, the fear, the eventual acceptance. It helped to know I wasn't alone in this confusion. "Thanks, Ethan," I said finally. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'd figure it out. You're stronger than you think, Dad, but I'm glad I can be here for you the way you've been here for me." After we hung up, I lay in bed feeling marginally better. I still didn't have answers, but I had a path forward, honesty, with Mike and with myself. The next Monday, I asked Mike if he wanted to grab dinner after work. We went to a small Italian place in northwest Portland, and over pasta and wine, I tried to work up the courage to say what I needed to say. "You seem distracted," Mike observed halfway through the meal. "I am sorry. Everything okay?" "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something, and I'm not really sure how to bring it up, so I'm just going to say it." He set down his fork, giving me his full attention. "Okay. I think I might be attracted to you, and I have no idea what to do with that information because I've never been attracted to a man before, and I'm not even sure if you date men, or if you'd be interested, or if I'm completely misreading everything." The words came out in a rush, and I immediately wanted to take them back. But Mike's expression didn't change to shock or discomfort. Instead, he smiled gently. "I wondered if you were going to say something," he said. "You knew." "I suspected, and to answer your questions, yes, I'm gay. I've known since college but was married to a woman for 10 years trying to make it work. It didn't. And yes, I'm interested in you. I have been since we met." Relief flooded through me. "Really?" "Really, but I didn't want to say anything because I knew you'd been through a lot and I wasn't sure where you were emotionally." "I'm not sure where I am emotionally either," I admitted. "This is all very new and very confusing for me." "That's okay, we can go slow, no pressure, no expectations, just two people getting to know each other." "I don't even know if I'm gay," I said. "I loved my wife, I was attracted to her." "You can be bisexual," Mike said. "Sexuality isn't always binary, and it's okay to not have it all figured out." My son said something similar. Mike's eyebrows rose. "You told your son about this?" "Yeah, he was actually really helpful. He came out as gay a few months ago, so he understands what I'm going through." "That must make things easier." "It does, though it's strange him giving me advice on coming out. Feels like the roles are reversed." We talked for the rest of dinner about sexuality and identity and discovery. Mike shared his own journey, the years of denial, the failed marriage, the eventual acceptance. He was patient with my questions and fears, never making me feel stupid or naive. "So what happens now?" I asked as we were leaving the restaurant. "Whatever you want to happen, we can keep having dinner as friends, or we can explore this attraction and see where it goes. Your choice." I thought about Ethan's advice, thought about Catherine and what she would want for me, and I thought about myself and what I wanted. "I'd like to see where it goes," I said, "if that's okay." Mike smiled. "That's more than okay." He walked me to my car and there was a moment of awkwardness as we said goodbye. Should we hug, shake hands, something else? Mike solved the problem by pulling me into a gentle hug. It was brief and friendly, but I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the cool spring evening. "Good night, David," he said. "Good night, Mike." I drove home feeling like I was floating, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. I had no idea what I was doing or where this was going. But for the first time in years, I felt alive. Over the next month, Mike and I saw each other regularly. We went to movies and museums, took walks in Forest Park, had long dinners where we talked about everything and nothing. He was patient with my uncertainty, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. Our first kiss happened 3 weeks in, standing in front of my house after a date. It was tentative and sweet, and when we pulled apart, Mike searched my face. "Okay," he asked. "More than okay," I said, surprised by how much I meant it. I told Ethan about Mike on a Sunday afternoon when he and Alex came over for dinner. We were sitting in the living room after the meal and I was trying to work up the courage to broach the subject. "Dad, you're being weird," Ethan finally said. "What's going on?" "I'm seeing someone," I blurted out. Alex and Ethan exchanged glances and then Ethan broke into a huge smile. "That's great, who?" His name is Mike Chen, he's an architect at my firm. Mike Chen, Ethan repeated, and I could see him processing. Wait, he. Yes. Ethan's smile got even bigger. Dad, are you telling me you're dating a man? I am, we've been seeing each other for about a month now. Alex let out a laugh of pure delight. This is amazing, welcome to the club. I couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. Thanks, though I'm still figuring out what club that is exactly. How are you feeling about it? Ethan asked more seriously. Good, scared, confused, happy, all of the above. I want to meet him, Ethan said. Can we do dinner with all four of us? If that's okay with Mike, I'd like that. We arranged a double date for the following Friday at a restaurant in the Pearl District. I was nervous about it, introducing my boyfriend. I was still getting used to that word. To my son and his boyfriend felt like a huge step. But the dinner went beautifully. Mike and Alex hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared experience of coming out and their love of design. Ethan was charming and welcoming, asking Mike thoughtful questions and clearly trying to make him feel comfortable. At one point, when Mike and Alex were deep in conversation, Ethan leaned over to me and whispered, I like him, Dad, he's good for you. You think so? I know so, you seem happier than you've been in years. Later, as we were saying goodnight in the parking lot, the four of us standing together, I had a moment of surreal awareness. Here I was, a 52-year-old man who thought he had his life figured out, standing with my gay son, his boyfriend, and my own male partner. 6 months ago, I could never have imagined this scene. Now, it felt right in a way I couldn't quite articulate. We should do this again, Alex said. I feel like we're forming a little family here. A queer architecture family, Mike added with a laugh. 3 out of 4 of us are designers. What am I, chopped liver? Alex protested. Graphic design is design. Fair point, Mike conceded. A queer design family. Ethan looked at me with such warmth and happiness that I felt tears prick my eyes. I love this, he said. I love all of this. Me too, I said, and I meant it. It was late May when Mike first spent the night at my house. We'd been taking things slow, but after a particularly nice date, dinner followed by a concert at the Schnitzer, neither of us wanted the evening to end. Do you want to come in for a drink? I asked as we pulled up to my house. I'd like that, he said. We had wine on the back deck looking out at the garden Catherine had planted years ago. It was in full spring bloom, roses and peonies and irises creating a riot of color and scent. This is beautiful, Mike said. My wife planted it, she had a real gift for growing things. We sat in comfortable silence for a while and then Mike said, Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever feel guilty about this, about us? I thought about the question. Sometimes, not because I think Catherine would disapprove, but because I feel like I'm living a life she never got to see, and I feel guilty that I'm happy when she's not here to be happy with me. That's survivor's guilt, Mike said gently. It's normal. Do you feel it with your ex-wife? A different version of it. I feel guilty that I lied to her even if I didn't know I was lying at the time. I feel guilty that she invested 10 years in a marriage that was never going to work because I wasn't being honest about who I was. Have you talked to her about it? We're friendly now, which is good, and she's remarried, happier than she was with me. That helps with the guilt. I wish I could talk to Catherine about this, I said. I think she'd understand, I think she'd want me to be happy, but I'll never know for sure. Mike reached over and took my hand. From everything you've told me about her, I think she'd not only understand, I think she'd approve of us. You think so? I do. She loved you enough to want you to keep living after she was gone. That's real love. We went inside and in an unspoken agreement ended up in my bedroom. What followed was tender and careful, both of us navigating new territory. Afterward, lying in the dark with Mike's head on my chest, I felt a profound sense of peace. Are you okay? Mike asked. I'm more than okay, I said. I'm happy. And I was. For the first time since Catherine died, I felt truly, completely happy. The summer passed in a blur of happiness. Mike spent more and more time at my house and we started talking about him moving in. Ethan and Alex came over regularly and the four of us developed our own little traditions: Sunday brunches, hiking trips, movie nights. One particularly memorable Saturday in July, we all went to Pride together. It was my first time attending, and I was overwhelmed by the energy, the joy, the celebration of identity and love in all its forms. We marched together, the four of us, and at some point, Ethan grabbed my hand on one side while Mike held the other. I looked at my son, at the man I loved, at Alex walking beside us with a rainbow flag draped over his shoulders, and I felt a surge of emotion so strong I had to stop walking for a moment. "You okay, Dad?" Ethan asked, concerned. "I'm perfect," I said, and I meant it. I'm absolutely perfect. That evening, back at my house, we were sitting on the deck when Ethan said, "Can I tell you something I've been thinking about?" "Of course," I said. "Alex and I have been talking about getting married." My heart leaped. "Really?" "Yeah, we're not engaged yet or anything, but we're talking about it, and when we do get engaged, I want you to be involved. Maybe help with planning, definitely walk me down the aisle." I felt tears spring to my eyes. I would be honored. "And we were thinking," Alex added, "that maybe it could be a double ceremony, if you and Mike wanted to get married too." Mike and I looked at each other in surprise. We talked about marriage in abstract terms but nothing concrete. "That's a beautiful thought," Mike said carefully, "but I think we need a bit more time." "Of course," Ethan said, "we're not in any rush either, but just know that when you're ready, we'd love to celebrate together." Later that night, after Ethan and Alex had gone home, Mike and I talked about marriage. "What do you think?" he asked. "Is that something you'd want?" "Eventually, yes," I said. "But you're right, we need more time. I need to be sure I'm doing this for the right reasons, because I love you and want to commit to you, not because I'm caught up in the excitement of discovering myself." "That's wise," Mike said, "and for what it's worth, I do love you, but I'm happy to wait until you're ready." "I love you too," I said, and saying the words out loud felt like a revelation. I really do. By autumn, Mike had officially moved in. The house that had felt so empty was now full of life again. We'd converted Catherine's old studio into a shared office space where we both worked on design projects. Mike's influence was everywhere: new plants, different art on the walls, his books mixing with mine on the shelves. One evening in October, almost exactly a year after I'd first heard those midnight voices from Ethan's room, I was working late when Mike came into the office with 2 mugs of tea. "You've been at this for hours," he said, setting a mug on my desk. "Take a break." I sat back, rubbing my eyes. "You're right, my brain is fried." He settled into his own chair and we sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then he said, "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "A year ago, you were alone in this house, grieving your wife, worried about your son. Now look at us, you've accepted Ethan's sexuality, accepted your own, we're living together, happy. That's a lot of change in 1 year." "It is," I agreed. "Sometimes it feels surreal, like I'm living someone else's life." "Do you have any regrets?" Yeah. I thought about the question seriously. "No, not about any of this. The only regret I have is not being more open earlier with myself, with Ethan, with life in general, but I can't change the past. I can only appreciate the present." That's a healthy way to look at it. "What about you, any regrets?" He smiled. "Just one, that I didn't meet you sooner. But then again, maybe we both needed to go through what we went through to be ready for this." Catherine used to say something like that everything happens in its own time. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She really was. We sat together, drinking our tea, and I felt a deep contentment. Not the wild excitement of new love, but something steadier and more sustaining. The kind of happiness that comes from being truly known and accepted. In November, Ethan called with news. He and Alex were officially engaged. They'd been hiking in the Columbia River Gorge and Alex had proposed at a scenic overlook. They were planning a wedding for the following summer. "We want to have it here in Portland," Ethan said. "Nothing too big, just close friends and family, and Dad, I want you to officiate." "Officiate as in perform the ceremony?" "Yeah, you can get ordained online, it's easy, and it would mean the world to us to have you be the one to marry us." I was honored and terrified in equal measure. "Are you sure? I've never done anything like that." "We're sure, you're the most important person in my life and this feels right." "Then I'd be honored." Mike and I helped them plan the wedding over the following months. It gave us something to focus on together, a project that brought all four of us closer. We looked at venues, tasted cakes, discussed flower arrangements and music choices. One evening in December, as Mike and I were addressing wedding invitations, he said, "This could be us, you know." What could be us? Planning a wedding, getting married if you wanted to. I set down my pen and looked at him. Is that a proposal? Not officially, I don't have a ring or anything, but I am saying that if you wanted to get married, I'd say yes. My heart was pounding. Can I think about it? Of course, take all the time you need. I did think about it. I thought about it a lot over the next few weeks. I thought about what marriage meant, what commitment meant, whether I was ready to take that step. I thought about Catherine and whether she'd be okay with me remarrying. I thought about my own journey of self-discovery and whether I'd come far enough to make such a significant commitment. On Christmas Eve, sitting in front of the fire with Mike, I made my decision. Yes, I said. He looked up from the book he was reading. Yes, what? Yes, I want to marry you. His face broke into the most beautiful smile. Really? Really, I don't need a big proposal or a fancy ring, I just need you and I need this us together building a life. He set aside his book and kissed me, and it felt like coming home. We decided not to do a double ceremony after all. Ethan and Alex's day should be their own. But we planned our own wedding for 2 weeks after theirs, a small intimate ceremony with just a few close friends. Ethan and Alex's wedding day in June was perfect. They'd chosen a garden venue in Washington Park with views of the city and Mount Hood in the distance. The ceremony was in the late afternoon, golden light filtering through the trees. I stood at the front as the officiant, looking out at the assembled guests, friends from college, co-workers. Alex's mother, his father hadn't come, which broke my heart for Alex, but which he seemed to be handling with grace. Mike sat in the front row, watching me with love and pride. When Ethan and Alex stood before me, holding hands, both of them with tears in their eyes, I had to take a moment to compose myself before speaking. "We're here today," I began, my voice not quite steady, "to celebrate love. Not just any love, but the kind of love that transforms us, that makes us braver and kinder and more fully ourselves. The kind of love that Ethan and Alex have found in each other." I went through the ceremony we'd planned, talking about their journey together, about the courage it takes to live authentically, about the importance of finding someone who sees you for who you truly are. When it came time for vows, Ethan went first. "Alex," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you walked into my life when I needed you most, even though I didn't know it at the time. You taught me that love isn't about fitting into someone else's expectations. It's about finding someone who loves you for exactly who you are. You make me laugh, you challenge me to be better, and you've given me the courage to live as my authentic self. I promise to spend the rest of my life being that person for you, your partner, your biggest supporter, your best friend. I love you." Alex's vows were equally moving, talking about how Ethan had given him hope after years of feeling disconnected from his family, how he'd found in Ethan not just a partner but a home. When I pronounced them married, they kissed to thunderous applause, and I had to wipe away tears before I could hug them both. At the reception, I gave a toast. "I've known Ethan his entire life," I said, "and I've never seen him as happy as he is with Alex. And Alex, you become like a son to me. Watching you two together has taught me so much about love and acceptance and the courage it takes to be yourself. Your mother," I said, looking at Ethan, "would be so proud of you both. I know she's here with us in spirit, celebrating this beautiful love story." To Ethan and Alex. Everyone raised their glasses, and as I sat down next to Mike, he squeezed my hand. "That was beautiful," he whispered. "Thanks, though I almost lost it several times." "Me too, watching you up there officiating your son's wedding, I kept thinking how far you've come, how far we've all come." 2 weeks from now, it'll be our turn," I said. "I can't wait." Our wedding was smaller and more intimate, just Ethan, Alex, and a handful of close friends. We held it in our own backyard, the garden in full summer bloom just as Catherine had planted it. Ethan officiated, returning the favor I'd done for him. He gave a speech about how proud he was of me for having the courage to discover this part of myself, for being open to love again, for showing him that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be. "My dad has always been my hero," Ethan said, looking at me with so much love it hurt. "But over the past year and a half, he's become something more, an inspiration. He's shown me that growth and change are possible at any age, that love comes in many forms, and that family is built not just on blood but on acceptance and support. Dad, Mike, I'm so happy for you both. And Mom," he looked up at the sky, "I know you're happy too." Mike and I exchanged vows we'd written ourselves. I promised to love him, support him, and continue growing with him. He promised the same, adding that he'd help me learn to dance properly since I'd stepped on his feet throughout our entire first dance at Ethan's wedding. When we kissed as married partners, I heard whoops and applause from our small group of witnesses, and I felt Catherine's presence as clearly as if she were standing right beside us, giving her blessing. It's been 2 years since that October night when I first heard voices from Ethan's room. 2 years since the discovery that started this whole journey. Now I'm sitting in that same living room, but everything is different. Mike is in the kitchen making dinner, singing along to a song on the radio. Ethan and Alex are coming over soon. They're looking at houses in the neighborhood because they want to be close to family when they start trying for kids through surrogacy. The house is full of life again, full of love, full of the kind of warmth that comes from living authentically and honestly. I think about that night often, about how close I came to missing all of this. If I'd never knocked on Ethan's door, if I'd never pushed for the truth, if I'd let fear keep me from really seeing my son, where would we be? If I'd ignored my own feelings about Mike, buried them under grief and habit and heteronormative assumptions, what would I have lost? The truth did change everything, but not in the way I expected that night when I first heard those whispered voices. I thought I was discovering my son's secret. Instead, I ended up discovering myself. Ethan and Alex arrive, and within minutes the house is filled with laughter and conversation. We eat dinner together, all four of us, and talk about work and house hunting and their surrogacy plans. Mike and I share a glance across the table, that married couple look that communicates 1,000 things without words. After dinner, we move to the deck for dessert and coffee. The sun is setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ethan and Alex are sitting close together on the bench, and Mike has his arm around my shoulders. "I've been thinking," Ethan says, "about that night you knocked on my door, about how scared I was, how sure I was that everything was about to fall apart." "I remember," I say, "you look terrified." "I was, but looking back now, I'm glad it happened. I'm glad you pushed even though I wasn't ready, because if you hadn't, I might have kept hiding for months or years longer, and then I wouldn't have all of this." "Me too," I say. "If you hadn't had the courage to tell me about Alex, I might never have examined my own feelings when Mike came into my life. You gave me permission to be honest with myself." "We saved each other," Ethan says simply. "Yeah, I agree, feeling emotional. We did." Alex raises his coffee cup, "To midnight secrets and the truths that change everything." "To found family and chosen family," Mike adds. "To love in all its forms," I say. "To Mom," Ethan says, looking up at the darkening sky, "who would be so happy to see all of this?" We sit together as the stars come out, and I think about how strange and wonderful life can be, how the things you think will destroy you can actually save you, how the secrets you're most afraid of can become the foundations of your truest self. That night I thought I was discovering my son's midnight secret, but the real secret, the truth that changed everything, was simpler and more profound. We are all capable of change, we are all capable of growth, we are all capable of love in more forms than we can imagine. And sometimes, the most frightening truths are the ones that set us free. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in this story, whether you're a young person afraid to come out, a parent struggling to accept your child's sexuality, or someone at any age discovering new truths about yourself, I want you to know something. It's never too late. It's never too late to be honest about who you are. It's never too late to choose love over fear. It's never too late to start living authentically. The journey won't always be easy. There will be moments of fear and confusion and grief for the life you thought you'd have. But on the other side of that fear is something beautiful, the truth, the real you, the life you were meant to live. And you don't have to do it alone. Find your people, build your family, accept the love that's offered to you, and offer love in return. The truth will change everything, but that's okay. Sometimes everything needs to change.